So this is putting the E in engagement. If you are not on Twitter, or if you are on Twitter, you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want to send me an email, I give you my card. And anything you tweet over the next 90 minutes should go to the hashtag Monumental14. There's a little bit about myself. My card says I'm a middle school principal in Franklin, Massachusetts at Horace Mann Middle School, one of 3 middle schools. At that school, I lead a leadership and service learning course for 8th grade students that they apply into. We complete a 10 to 12 week service learning project, and at the end of it, there's a PSAs. They create public service announcements as a final product of their thing, and I'll show you a couple of those at the end. In my spare time, I'm also a doctoral candidate at Northeastern University, where I'm studying student motivation for learning and its relation to the use of social media in the classroom. So this is all kind of right up my alley. So I have one goal for today, and that's for you to leave with a working knowledge of supportive theory, research, and practice in order to develop and implement e-service learning coursework in your own school or in your district or wherever you'd like. I do not pretend that you will leave here today as experts in theory and research and whatever else, nor do I want to bore you with all of that. I'll give you a quick overview, and we'll talk a little bit about a lot, and then you have kind of a working knowledge of what's behind it. The goal really for me is a lot of the stuff I've seen this week has been about the what. You know, let's use this tool, let's use this app, let's try this project. What I want you to come out of here with is the why. Why does it actually work? So when I have the students use some technology with their service learning and it works, what I'm hopefully going to give you is a lot of that, the understanding of why. And I've put it in framed my talk around this framework. Everything, regardless of what level you are, everything is, the foundation of it all is a developmental understanding of your students. We teach elementary school different than we teach middle school, then we teach high school, then we teach college, then we teach adults. And knowing who you're dealing with then supports relevant theory and research, which is the underlying frame of all effective teaching practice. It's all based, hopefully, in something. It's not just by accident. And technology really is the very top of that. And I think too often, as we approach the halfway through-ish, the 14th year of the 21st century, we're putting technology at the bottom. And we're saying that everything we're going to do is based on the technology, and I think that's the wrong approach. I think it lives at the top, and if we don't establish that foundation to get there, then it all just falls. So I'm going to start with developmental understanding of students, and then we'll move up as we go along. But I wanted to get an idea of, so we can sort of get ourselves all on the same page, so we know what we're talking about. I'll give you a minute just to sort of talk through some ideas with what is engagement. I think a lot of the words cognitive, mental, movement, full buy, I don't know if that was separate or not, emotional, physical senses. So a lot of those things, I think we all kind of understand what engagement is, but it's certainly important that we take the time to actually figure out, are we on the same page? So I think we're good. All right, so after all that, we're going to start by taking care of a couple of myths. This, I think, is one of the things that I referenced in the beginning, a big myth as far as what we're doing with bringing technology into schools and kind of hoping for the best. If we build it, they will use it. They will become more engaged. They will. I had a conversation last week with someone from a different district who was telling me about the district plan to incorporate technology, and she said, well, next year we're going to have Wi-Fi in all our schools. And I said, great. Then what? Well, and then we're going to talk about having kids bring devices in. Cool. Then what? So really the idea of just having the technology and just putting stuff in front of them, we have this focus on technology acquisition, and it's carried out with this assumption that students will automatically learn or be engaged or do better just because of that. So I'll talk a lot more about trying to shift that conversation from technology acquisition to learning and student outcomes instead. So let's talk about how technology enhances that. And I think it's too easy when you have the if you build it mindset just to take ineffective practice and just put it online. The other one is that there is some one-size-fits-all curriculum, device, app, something that will fix all of our problems. This is a simple solution, or trying to find simple solutions to complex problems. And education is not easy. There is no singular approach that's going to make everything better. And I think it's important that we start to move away from this idea even of best practice, which has become a little overused, and we start thinking about effective practices. And here's a Dilbert, and I love Dilbert, so I try to throw Dilbert in whenever I can. So Scott Adams kind of hits my point home there too. And there's even some talk now about thinking less about best practice and more about the next practice, which isn't to say that we should always be thinking about what's the next best thing to come along, but this works right now for these students in front of me, but what am I going to do tomorrow? And what am I going to do next year? And always thinking about, to overuse another cliche, is that growth mindset. How do I get better and better and better in the best interest of students? So any new technology that captures kind of widespread attention, we talk about social media and students using their own devices and things like that, usually causes some pretty serious hand-wringing amongst adults and folks, if not full-blown panic. So I'm going to share some of that through this series of slides. So that was Plato quoting or writing about Socrates, who was talking about written word was his concern, that just by introducing the written word, where it was so much oral history driven, that it was going to make people only appear smart. So anytime anything changes, it causes people to be concerned. So there's this great book, or there's a couple, and I'll reference a few of them, and this one came out this year or last year. I think Tom Bennett is a teacher, British teacher, and he's essentially had enough. And he talks a lot about in this book is a debunk, and he essentially takes a shot at each of those things that you see there and really comes after the research or lack thereof, particularly with Brain Gym. He is not a huge supportive fan of Brain Gym. I'll let you, in his book, and then there's a talk that goes along with this research ed that he puts on, at least I think he did it last year, I'm not sure if it's every year, but I'll take one of the main points from his talk there. Here.
I think what we can do as teachers, which is far more powerful than even participating in an RCT, far more powerful than generating our own research, is not to be scientists, because we don't have time to be good scientists. We don't. I don't. And I love this stuff. but we can be more scientific.
So he says we don't have time to be scientists, but we can be more scientific. And what he's talking about is not blindly adopting flawed practice, not just doing whatever you hear because it's the next best thing. Because you can imagine in this very subtle but hilarious image that the two men, they knew, well, I take the letter, I put it down, I spray it. I take the letter, I put it down, and I spray it. But if you don't stop and look and say, wait a minute, if you just do what you're supposed to do without really questioning why, then you may end up with something like this. There's a little Frederick Hess, who has a lot of stuff out there on the internet, and a couple of books that he's done also is a little more intense than Tom Bennett is, and he outright rejects anything that claims to be an adjustment to current system. Anything that isn't completely starting all over again or taking what we have and destroying it and building again is just not okay, because we just keep trying to fine-tune this machine that isn't the right machine to begin with. So it ramps the spectrum, or runs the spectrum of different opinions out there. Along the lines of blind adoption, using the buzzwords doesn't make it right. You're saying that you expect people to be innovative and independent and critical thinkers who just do what you're telling them to do. You've got all the right words there, but the approach is just wrong. So really to question and why and to figure out how it fits. So they're not saying don't follow any research, but it's just don't blindly follow. It's messy, it's complicated, and technology is only making it more messy and more complicated. So we really have to be thoughtful and careful about our implementation. One more myth is this idea that failure is not an option. And I read a couple of things in the fall, I think. It was fun. People were calling it the F word and talking about using the F word in schools. And I really like that. And in real life, we know that this is what success looks like. It's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's not you do it right or you don't. It's you make a lot of mistakes back and forth until you finally get there. And sometimes you don't finally get there and you get on a new road and you try something else. And that's okay. And there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of stakes and there's a lot of things driving people to make decisions. But if we lose sight of this, we end up with school spelled wrong on the road. So here's a couple of differing views on educational technology. And I'll give you a minute to read it and then I'll ask you to kind of to talk about who's right. Are they both right? Are they both wrong? Where do you stand? Two pretty prolific ed tech chatters on Twitter. So the bottom one pretty directly calling out the top one, although it was the better part of 3 months later. But almost word for word, tech is just a tool. And then at the bottom, adults think technology is just a tool. So you're right, but who's right? Or are they that different? Are they the same? And am I just interpreting what they're saying as two opposite ends of the spectrum? What do you think? So in saying that a new tool lets you do things that you couldn't do before or you couldn't do previously, is one of them more right with what they're saying? And it's Twitter. It's 140 characters, so it's hard to get your point across. So more close, the bottom being more close with the adults thinking of it as a tool, but because as the younger generation, the young people are born into it, they don't necessarily think of it as a tool necessarily. I got you. You're good? You're good? Yeah, okay. That's all right. So I'm going to tell you what I think about both of them because I get to, because I have the microphone. And I'm a principal, and that's what we do. So I don't like the top one because he says just. That one word just really bothers me because I don't think that's true. I don't think it's just a tool. But again, it's Twitter. It was a part of a chat that he was facilitating, so I don't know where it came from, whatever. But I don't like that word just. And I don't like much of the bottom one at all because I think it walks a very fine line of some of the myths that I've identified or that I will identify with that young people think of it as a foundation. I don't think that's true. I don't think they think about it at all. sometimes. And it's not that they're born good at technology. It's just always been around. So they're still trying to figure out the world just like we did. But their world involves a lot more things than ours potentially. It may not be more, it may just be different. Oh, it's all right. What do you think? I did that. And this really hits at the foundation of that. That this assumption that technology fixes everything or will change everything or will automatically make teaching and learning better. But technology can't be just a fad, though, either. We can't let technology integration be the thing we did last year. It has to be a part of what we do, but the approach to it is through good teaching, through understanding the kids who are in front of us and to bringing them to a place where technology enhances what we're doing, particularly service learning, and not just to put it out there and hope for the best. All right, I don't want to spend a lot of time telling you what not to think or not to believe anything that anyone says, because I'm going to tell you some stuff. I would appreciate it if you believe. All right, so we're going to move up, continuing with developmental understanding, and we're going to start to get in some of the theory and research. Now, there's only 3 of you, so if you fall asleep during the theory and research parts, I'm going to know. So do your best. All right, so to begin with, what is E? I'm saying E-service learning, and we have email. We see E-learning, E-classroom, E-harmony. E really is just a letter that means electronic. That's it. Email is just electronic mail. Okay? E-service learning is electronic service learning. There's a lot of words that we use, and maybe not we, but that I've seen around that have come to mean this same thing. When we say E, we just start throwing all these words out there. And any of those words, whether you can read them or not, really just imply that it occurs online or is enhanced or is structured in some way with technology. But when we use all of these synonyms and we let all of this noise cloud what we're talking about, words like this get to sneak by. And I don't like that our kids are called bored, that they're tech obsessed, that they're addicted to technology. That's very, very wrong. But it sneaks in there because we're all talking about the same thing in 1,000 different ways. And some of those things that are 1,000 different ways, or at least 3 different ways, are these things. 21st century skills, 21st century learning, all those things. This idea of self-directed and really understanding what self-directed means and not using it as a synonym for just occurring online, and the concept of digital natives. So these words I'll talk more in more depth about, which is why I pulled them out, but they've just come to mean all things technology. When we say E, or we say electronic, or when we say these, what we really mean is that it uses technology, but they've come to mean some different things. There was some researchers at Michigan State University last year who did a meta-analysis of all of the potential, or all the popular literature, books, trade magazines, whatever, that use this concept of 21st century skills, learning, or otherwise. And they took it all and they were able to say, all right, here, when we say 21st century learning, we're talking about 3 things. We're talking about humanistic knowledge, meta-knowledge, and foundational knowledge. So they took all of that and were like, all right, gang, here's what we're really talking about. But then their conclusion was that what we know, what we value, and how we act have always been important. So we've taken this new label for things that we've been talking about forever. We know that this is important. Why do we have to call it something else? Why do we have to now call it 21st century learning? Anything you can see around the outside is not new. Creativity is not new. Literacy is not new, although they've added digital literacy in there, which is a little bit new. But if you can't read, speak, write, any of that, these are all core concepts that we've been talking about forever. So they decided that the 21st century skills is something they called an empty signifier. An empty signifier is a term that we all think we understand, but we can't quite clearly articulate. And so you got a bunch of people running around wearing their 21st century skills, and the clothes are invisible. And it's going to take somebody to say, hey, the king's naked. It's a fantastic story, by the way. I love it. I have a 4-year-old. She loves it too. Okay, so another myth, another kind of understanding of our students is that this idea of digital natives. You guys heard digital natives before? Kind of be tossed around. We've talked a little bit about as we were approaching that. So it assumes, or there's some assumptions in there that the students are inherently good at technology, but that they're also, I've heard it called the instant gratification generation. But everybody wants things right away. It's not just the kids. And it brings these negative labels to our students and ignores things like teaching how to approach a complex multi-stage problem because they want the answers right now, so I'm not even going to bother. Or I'm not going to show them the skills to do it because they're just going to be able to use the computer and look it up on Google. So it changes that presumption that they're good at it, that they're competent in digital media, leads people to say things like, oh, it worked. With blogging with kids, it worked, and they wrote stuff. And they just wrote because they were using technology. They've never written like that before. They've never told me so many stories about themselves. But because they're using technology, they wrote a lot. Well, they wrote a lot because you asked them about themselves. Don't lose sight of what you did. The teaching was the important part. The approach was the effective part. The technology was just icing on the cake. So this book just came out this year. Danah Boyd, who is a blogger, wrote about 10 years of research she did with students from all over the place and really talking to them about social media and using social networking, and starting in around 2000, which is when it really sort of was taking off. And she talks to students in the book about MySpace. Remember that one? And her conclusions are great because they're obvious, but they're not at the same time. Like they're young kids, teenagers, whatever. They're looking for a place to call their own. They're looking for a place to hang out. They like hanging out. And that's not new. And the thing she's finding is that it's really just not new, and they're just trying to figure out a way to find their place in the world, the same that they always do. She does bring this idea of networked publics into the conversation, which is really great, about that they're socializing, and they're socializing in a way that does occur online, and they're socializing potentially with people that they wouldn't otherwise socialize with. She really comes after some of the stuff with presuming that everyone who's on the internet is doing something bad, and we have to keep our kids away from that kind of stuff. She says that teenagers like being social. They like connecting with other people, and that doesn't always include their friends. They like to find other people, like to find these groups, and as social media changed, they found different ways to do that. So before, when it first came out, and the chat rooms were the cool thing on the internet, it was the social isolationists who would go and we'd sit on the chat rooms and would do it to avoid conversation. And she says that the use of social media has grown into not avoiding, but to enhancing. So you may hang out with somebody during the day and then still continue that conversation at night, or post a picture or something like that at night and continue that conversation the next day. She also says that we're worries that we're taking away too much. You guys know what this is? I might take it away. So a youth escort policy is, I don't know if they have them a lot anymore, but it was limiting in malls, particularly. You'd see one, so like it'd be like the movie theater back here, and then that's the rest of the mall. And there would be a sign right here that said, anyone under 18 can't come past this point after 8 o'clock on Friday, or 6 o'clock on Friday, or 6 o'clock on Saturday, whatever, unless you have a parent guardian with you. So this was something that she referenced, and it's, if kids want to be social, and we're not giving them a place to be social outside, then we're forcing them almost to be social online. And we have to be okay with that if we're not going to let them hang out outside of the internet. Or if we structure their day so they come home from school and it's homework and soccer and dance and everything else until midnight, and then hockey starts at midnight, so you're not going to sleep, and then you get up in the morning and do it all over again. When we take away their opportunity to be social, we're taking away really the one thing that they really want. They use social media, yes. but they don't know how to evaluate what they see. And that's our job. Our job is to teach them how to evaluate, how to go there and how to use it, but then how to say, all right, is it good or bad? Is it helpful or unhelpful? There's a lot of things, trends that have come out with teenagers acting stupid and then posting it online to encourage more teenagers to act stupid, like vodka eyeballing. You know what that is? Taking a shot of vodka through your eye. Yeah, stupid. But it spreads. Things like that spread online. Lots of other ignorant things to drink in and around. But teaching them that just because it's there doesn't make it right. This gets into a little bit of an idea of new sort of philosophies on learning. The idea that declarative knowledge is supplemented by, or even supplanted by knowing where the knowledge can be found. So you knew to access a strategy, and your strategy was to write. So is knowing how to find that knowledge maybe more important than otherwise? And this story is the 6 blind men and the elephant. So this is the last line, or last couple of lines, again. And this starts to get into some of the theory, that next step, that we understand who our students are. So what's the research? What's the theory? How do we begin to approach teaching? And if you guys are very nice to each other. You didn't argue, which was good. You kind of let it go. That was fine. But if we're faced with 9 squares with each different things, that just becomes too much to know, and we want to argue about who's right, no one's ever going to learn anything. The moral of that story is that each one of us sees things exclusively with their own point of view. But we should try to understand other people's point of views. And I would take that to another level with the idea of knowledge and learning. And there's a book, David Weinberger wrote a book a couple years ago. It's called, and the title says it all, is Too Big to Know, Rethinking Knowledge Now That the Facts Aren't the Facts, Experts Are Everywhere, and the Smartest Person in the Room is the Room. There's so much out there. We can't possibly know everything. And using networked technologies just gives us access to more and more and more and more and more. And sometimes when you find things like in the beginning, you find 2 different viewpoints, and which one is right? And how do we then bring that back to the conversation, and how does that impact our learning? So with learning changing, there's this idea we talked about engagement in the beginning. There's a theory, it's called engagement theory, that talks about students being meaningful, engaged with learning activities through interaction, through learning to learn, through finding knowledge, through collaborating. And the engagement theory has 3 principles: relate, create, and donate. And relate is that they're working together. Create is that it's project-based, that they're building something. And donate is giving back to the community, or making something, doing something better, bettering something. This was brought up about 1998 by a couple of technology educators at a university level when online learning was really starting to become a thing. So these 2 guys were like, all right, there's something going on here. This technology thing is pretty cool, and it's working. But if we're going to make it work, we need to really connect it to what would make it an engaging process. So if we look at it a different way, this idea of engagement theory sort of underlies team effort, communication, project-based learning, and then useful real-world contributions. So each of these has to be specifically taught. These aren't things that we can sit kids together and hope that they know. Group work is not collaboration. Teaching those skills, teaching how to think critically, teaching how to give back. And then the other part of this is that social media enhances all those as well. In modern social media integration research, you see those words, those categories of advantages coming up over and over again. So social media can enhance student engagement. It doesn't replace it, but you can teach teamwork through social media. You can teach project-based learning and application through social media. You can teach how to give back to the community through social media. Some of the things that you'll find is more personalized, more productive learning. Focus is on collaboration and engagement. Increased interaction, connections, teamwork, creativity, problem solving, global awareness. All these things you'll find that people are using social media or using technology effectively. Those are the things that they'll say about us. I'm talking about social media in a very broad scope. Any tool that enhances or accelerates connections, communications, or collaborations. A variety of sites and services allows you to post and share. I think that more general definition is helpful because what's popular today may not be tomorrow, and what's popular tomorrow may not exist today. And I'm not talking about much of what you see there. You can use that, sure, if you know what they are. Go for it. But there's so much out there that the one thing, there isn't one app, there isn't one approach that's going to make it work. It's the overall approach, the foundation that's going to help you build it. I play this game with parents. They go identify as many as you can, because every single one of them is on your kid's phone. And if you don't know what it is, you better ask them. Some of the things, there's a couple of them. The one that looks like a yak, because it is the ghost, the pound sign face, the telephone, the kick, K-I-K, the two little ghosty faces in the bottom. Those are all messaging apps too, and that's kind of the new trend in social media for our kids, or in the stuff that they're using, because we've kind of met them now on Facebook and Twitter, and we're all kind of there, so they're finding another place to go, because as we're approaching it, we're saying, you can't be here anymore. We're putting a youth escort policy on Facebook. So the messaging, we're not following them too. So here's a couple of kind of the summary of the research. This is what it promotes, what it helps, what it provides, what it can do, but it certainly doesn't replace everything. So when I go back to that engagement theory, it fits very nicely with service learning. That idea of relate, create, donate, work together, do something, and give back to the community. But it also fits really, really well with social media. And they work together to make each other better. And I added these arrows not to say that service learning does one better than the other, or social media does one better than the other, but to show how they complement each other. Service learning emphasizes giving back to the community. That's the whole point of it. Without that piece of it, you're not really doing service learning. Social media emphasizes collaboration. That's what it does. So they complement each other so nicely to play off each other's strengths and to play off the areas that aren't all weaknesses, because service learning still has great effects in relating to each other and working together. But it's possible to conduct a service learning project by yourself. If you can, that's cool. It's not really possible to get on social media by yourself. I mean, you can, but it is possible to use social media in a way that isn't productive, that doesn't give back to the community. So here's what e-service learning is. Ta-da! Please ignore the man behind the curtain. It's when instruction, service, or both occur online. So the online instruction stuff you get. Maybe you've seen online classes. Service is a little tricky. But I heard a lot this week of, not in a bad way, but I heard a lot of I can't. Well, I can't do that. I can't do this. We can't go to the site. We can't have somebody in. But you can connect with an organization online. And you can do some online work for them. You can promote awareness online. You can make a video and post it online. You can do service without actually being somewhere to serve, which gives you an opportunity to connect to places that you couldn't connect before. Very, very few people get to go to a developing nation and work and really serve. But anybody can get on the Oxfam website and help out. or promote on your Twitter account Oxfam, or do something like that. You can give back by doing that, by using the internet. So this is kind of the last bit of that theory and research. And this is early 20th century constructivism. You remember learning about that in teacher school. This is the foundation for learning, for the foundation for using social media, the foundation for service learning. Allowing students to learn, allowing students to discover the process of living, the process of learning, sets it all up for you. Some of these kind of things that I would like to see replace the words that we're using around 21st century digital learning. All these things that don't really mean much or tend to mean the same thing, these are the words I'd rather see us using. When you approach it from a way that's based in theory, understanding of your students, to get you to a place where you're able to more effectively incorporate technology, more effectively incorporate service learning. We've got one more section, but that was kind of a lot of information. Learn anything? So far, so good. All right. Before we jump up into the last little bit to talk about what I did, to really get into the practical application of, so we understand these kids. It's based in theory and research. And I'm going to talk about effective practices using technology. I will not in the next, how much time do I have? 20 minutes, talk to you about technology by itself. Because I don't think that's the right approach. And I hope I've convinced you that I don't think that's the right approach. That even with technology, it has to be steeped in effective practice. So this is what community service looks like online. This is the community service office in St. Louis. It's their Facebook page. Great place to go and get some ideas and talk about what you did. But what it's not community service learning online. It's not e-service learning. This is what community service learning looks like online. This is our learning management system. It's a screenshot from my actual course from last week, week 6 of the thing. If you've never seen an online class before, your left side there is the dashboard. This is where a lot of the stuff gets stored. I've sorted it in week by week. Discussion boards, reading materials, videos, things to watch. And then this centerpiece is the planner. So this is what's coming up. This was what we were doing in week 6. Just a quick update. The orange that's tough to see was their discussion board prompt for week 6. Here's what a discussion board looks like. If you've never seen one, it's really not that cool. Remember the first time you saw the internet? And you were like, oh, that's it? That's kind of his online coursework. Here you go. Lots of words. It's much more exciting when it's actually there. But this is what, when I post a discussion, each student responds, and then what you can't see off to the side is then each student responded to that. And I'll talk more about how I built that. But, so what I did was, I had students apply. This year I had 23 students apply, and I accepted 16. It's an application program just for 8th grade students. They apply anonymously. I don't know who they are. They propose a project, and then they have to have that project in mind, because the point of my course, the objectives that I'll talk about next, are leadership. So I'm teaching them leadership strategies. I'm teaching team leadership through service. I can't, in 10 weeks, do both, I don't think, effectively. So they need to come to me with an idea for a project. What I've picked up this week is some of the stuff that I can put out even a month ahead of time to say, if you're going to be interested in doing this a year or a month or so from now, here's some of the ways that you can begin to develop your own projects. I'm really kind of counting on them to have an idea of something they might like to do. It also doesn't hurt to give them a little motivation. So my course is anchored in 4 objectives. Lots of words in there. This is effective teaching practice, if I say so myself. critical social consumer, I highlighted some of the stuff: community service and volunteerism, humanitarian issues, academic, social, and civic skills, effective communication. So this is what I'm looking to teach them. So week to week, we go through each of the 4 objectives, just like you would in a normal curricular unit on anything, and I take them through learning about leadership, especially youth leadership, which is a little bit more challenging. And it's in the philosophy that I'm trying to give the students an opportunity to take that knowledge, to apply their classroom knowledge into the community. So we're talking about research or leadership, we're learning about leadership, and we're doing a project-based, real-world application that clearly, I think, matches engagement theory, some of the constructivist stuff that I showed you, and some of what I think is the research around using social media. There's also some expected outcomes. This is what I'm hoping to develop with my students. So it's based in this idea of leadership and developing leadership. The service learning isn't necessarily an afterthought, but it's the application of what they're learning. So I could just teach a leadership course, and we could go online, or we could meet in person, we could do whatever, and we could talk through leadership. But this then takes it to that level that I think makes it more enriching. And what got me here today. And as a final product, and this they know from the beginning, they need to make a 2 to 5 minute video presentation. Tells the story of what they did, what they learned, whether it was community service or if it's humanitarian issues, raises awareness around what their issue was. So when it's all said and done, it appears here. They do we have a public service announcement symposium. Our 2nd annual one is later this month, first part of May. Last year, 13 students presented. This year, there'll be 16. Last year, I sent an invitation to one of our state representatives, and he came and spoke to the students at the beginning. And then when it's all done, they all get posted online, and I'll give you the website for all that stuff in a minute. So after we spoke, or after they went through, this is a picture of my group on the front steps of the State House. We were invited to the State House to meet with some of the lawmakers to talk about some of the issues they did. Very articulate, wonderful videos. As soon as anyone sat down in front of them and said, "So, tell me about what you did," nothing. Very shy, but they gave it a shot. So and I talked about the e-learning component of it. Here's an example of a discussion board post that I pulled earlier about a month ago. I asked the students to take 8 characteristics of leadership. I gave them just 8, and they had to rank them 1 to 8, 1 being the most important, and then talk about why. So Tori's post on the top was her initial discussion board post, and then Caitlin below her, I don't know why the name's not there, and then Rory underneath it were writing back to what Tori said. So they were participating in a discussion online. I found very early on in the first course, when I did it last year, that I could give them these discussion board posts, and they would have these brilliant things to the prompts. And then all the other students in the course would say, "Great job." Really nice. The equivalent of liking and thumbs upping and favoriting and retweeting and all that. So I had to teach them how to continue a conversation. And even now, they're really good at starting with things like, what I think you mean is, and enhancing the conversation beyond, "Hey, I like that," or "Hey, you spelled words wrong," which we don't even, when we're getting into discussion boards and stuff, grammar, spelling, as long as we know what you mean, it's fine. But what I need to do the next step now is get the initial poster to then go back and respond to those questions. So they're great at posting the questions, but they're not in the habit of going back and then continuing the conversation throughout. So that's the next part to teach them. All right, so I have a couple of rules. One of the rules is they're not allowed to collect any money. We don't, under any circumstances, will I allow them to do a drive or anything where they're just going around and getting money for a cause. And I try to limit the number of donation drives that we have. In 10 weeks, having 10 donation drives would be kind of ridiculous at school. But they're welcome to go out and connect with organizations and put in boxes and put things into places at other places. That's fine. But I also try to challenge them to make it more than just a drive, more than just a one-off thing. And what Wes did was he took the simple idea, a relatively simple idea of collecting birthday party supplies. We're doing a donation drive for the food pantry. And he took these birthday party supplies and he put them in bags. And a family that goes to the food pantry in Franklin that has young children can say, you know, they have a birthday party, they have a birthday coming up, they have whatever, and the food pantry can give them a party in a bag. An Insta-party is what he called his nonprofit organization. They bring it home, and the party, everything they need for a birthday party is right there. So they don't have to go out and buy cake mixes and wrapping paper and things like that. He still does it, so he's created Insta-party, and now as a freshman, it still continues. So again, not a one-off kind of thing. Partly what we use, and this is a video that I'll skip, but it's on the difference between a wiki. You heard the word wiki a lot. Thanks to Mr. Snowden, we all know what a wiki is now. I use wikiing in my course, but it's Google Apps, Google Drive instead. And the advantages of using things like wikis is that it allows students to collaborate all on the same thing at the same time. So this is a student's project proposal that has some of my feedback. Above it has other students offering her feedback. She rewrote kind of a summary of what she was doing, and it's got no less than 6 different people commenting on the same thing. So helping each other out in a collaborative way, using, again, social media. The little green thing that you can see up in the corner here is me looking at her site or her project proposal through a different browser. I just happen to have 2 browsers open at the same time. One of the students, when I was trying to give feedback, you can see who else is looking at it, and I could see that the student popped up and was looking at her project proposal while I was giving feedback. So that was kind of weird, because I was typing, and then it'd see it, and then it'd go away. So she was like, almost like peeking through, like big brothering me a little. So that was a really kind of a cool thing. So not quite a wiki, but the same kind of thing. I got one more, but I got to skip through that because I'm running out of... You guys have been so nice just for coming. I don't want to keep you here forever. So what you'll see is as we move up and up and up, and the last one, the young lady connected with, you'll see a screenshot of it here in a second. She connected with an organization called Souls for Souls, and that's a company that, or a group that donates shoes to African villages, things like that, places where they don't have shoes. So there it is right there. So she connected and she ran a shoe drive. Again, not a one-off thing, because she connected one of the local gyms, and they keep a box now. And they're a place, when you go to the Souls for Souls website and you look in your area, or you look in my area, you can see that there's a regional drop-off now at this gym. So yes, it was a drive and that she collected shoes, but she created this permanent fixture now in this gym, and was able to connect with an organization nowhere even close to where we live. So what I think and what I found is that when used effectively, and as a part of the pyramid that I'll end with, social media enhances that collaborative opportunities. Students are going to connect with their peers and their friends no matter what, but if you start to get out there a little bit, you can connect with local businesses and local nonprofits, and the more you go, the more you use it, and the more connections you make, you can really start to connect with some global organizations, things that we just couldn't do 10 years ago.